This is Brian Pugh. Brain Injury Connectors is my chance to talk with individuals with brain injuries, family members, healthcare providers, policymakers, and others making an impact on their community, their state, their country, and beyond. We will hear their stories, learn what inspires their lives and work, find out what they know or would have liked to have known, and discover what factors and individuals have been most influential on their success in the ever-evolving world of brain injury and brain injury recovery. So today on Brain Injury Connector, we are blessed to have with us Debora Fajer-Smith. She is with Joseph Greenwell and Lake and has been a personal injury and workers' comp attorney for 38 years, and we were lucky enough to have her at our conference this year. She has been doing this work for a very long time and impacted a variety of different lives in a variety of different ways. And we're very excited to have her to tell us all kinds of different things. It's a far-reaching conversation, and we're blessed to have her. So, Debora, thank you for coming today on Brain Injury Connector.
Brian, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you.
Absolutely. Well, we're tickled, so I just want to jump right in. And this is going to be a little bit different format because as an expert, I really want to pick your brain on this stuff. So you have been at the forefront of workers' comp and personal injury in Maryland for a long time. And there's, a lot of people have heard of workers' compensation, workers' comp, but they may not be familiar with what that really means. And so kind of for a layman, can you kind of give us a brief overview of what workers' comp is, how it works, and how you help people who are injured at work?
Okay, sure. In a generic sense, you mean first,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely. Just sort of, I don't know about workers' comp. Tell me what it is and what the purpose of it is, and why would I need somebody you to help me sort of navigate it?
Well, even before I discuss that, I just want to tell you that, you all are doing such great work, because when a client comes into me, usually with their family, if it's a severe injury, I can pick up the signals because you all train people to do that. And I can tell them immediately that there is some kind of a brain injury that they may not even realize. Mm-hmm. The accident might have happened 2 weeks ago. They're home. They're nursing a broken arm or this or that. They're sent back from the hospital. No one's done a cognitive test.
Right.
So the first thing I do in my office is make sure that we have that examined and, mm-hmm. and that we know what we're dealing with. And a lot of times my clients are just shocked, 'cause I'm not a doctor and I don't purport to be a doctor.
Right.
But having seen these symptoms over and over
mm-hmm.
for decades, I can spot it, and it's usually confirmed. But workers' comp is here for one reason, and that is to assist the worker in wages and medical benefits to recovery, and then to get them back to where they should be. And if not, they get a permanent award.
Mm-hmm.
It was established back in 1914. It was a quid pro quo, the big grand compromise, because what happens is workers' comp in Maryland is required by law. So the employer must pay those premiums. So counter to what some people say, oh, am I suing them? No, you're not. These are premiums that were already paid as regulations require.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, the employee has coverage regardless as to fault. If he slipped or fell, or if he or she accidentally did something that might have contributed to the injury, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Workers' comp is a no fault. That's the beauty of it. The exchange, the bargain, the grand bargain, is that the employer, him or her, cannot be sued for the same incident.
Oh, okay.
There are situations where I handle both, the workers' comp and the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
But the lawsuit is usually against a different party.
Okay.
That was perhaps on the scene in the workplace accident.
I see.
So it could have been a scaffold that was not tied properly by an independent contractor that was working there,
mm-hmm.
and the gentleman or the woman falls to the ground, injuring her head, and she gets workers' comp through her employer, but she also would have a claim against any negligence of a third party.
Got it. So So when people talk about, I don't want to sue my employer, they were really nice, I like them, it's a family business, I've worked here for a very long time.
Right.
You're not, when I get a workers' comp claim, it's not that I'm suing the company or I'm suing the family that runs the company. I'm basically getting an insurance carrier to cover whatever expenses I can get. But so it's
Yeah,
not them at all. It's something they've already paid for, something we've already paid for.
exactly. The
Got it.
premiums have already been paid, but the comp situation gives you a little bit more coverage than just a medical, like a health insurance plan.
Mm-hmm.
The comp situation, and the reason why sometimes it does get a little, let's say, you have to use advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you need a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
is because there are little loopholes that the defense insurance company for the defense can fight you on.
Mm-hmm.
And you do never, this is important, you never pay for an attorney in workers' comp in Maryland out of pocket, ever. You don't get a bill.
Okay.
So should you go to a hearing with your lawyer and you get certain medical benefits, or you get certain lost time indemnity payments, unless the commissioner orders a percentage of that to be paid to me as an attorney, you don't pay anything. Usually it's no more than 20% of any recovery.
So do I go
Um,
to, so it sounds like there's a difference between a workers' comp attorney and a PI attorney. Is that right? Personal injury attorney?
yeah, I happen to be both,
Okay. But you
which
don't
comes in very
necessarily,
handy.
have to be. You can just be a workers' comp. So I could go to a workers' comp attorney and know that I'm not going to get a bill. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Okay.
You don't get a bill, but the only way the attorney would be paid is if, in fact, the commission orders it out of that award.
Got it. Okay, cool. And then,
But
you
I
need
think
to
it's
have the
important.
PI. You have to have both pieces, because in case this isn't working out or there's somebody else who's
Right.
at fault who has to compensate you for more, that's when it's nice to have the combination like you.
Absolutely. I think it's very important to go to someone that's knowledgeable with the whole spectrum from A to Z, that can combine the workers' comp and personal injury, because there is an interplay. For example, let's say you get an award from workers' comp at the end, and it's X amount. When you go against the third party, if you decide that you do want to proceed against that person, you have to pay by law a portion of that workers' comp proceeds back to the comp carrier. So if you have someone with experience, such as myself, that can then negotiate that lien or discuss issues ahead of time with the carrier, knowing how these cases work out, I think that it benefits the client in the end, because you want the best result for the client.
So it's like if workers' comp gives you X payment and then you go sue this third party and this third party gives you Y payment, workers' comp back and says, look, we paid you for the whole thing, but this person owned a piece of that injury, a piece of that problem, so we deserve a piece back of what we already gave you.
Workers' comp is a statutory lien in Maryland. Yeah, it's a statutory lien, but it can all be worked out if the parties have good attorneys that can talk and work it out. But getting back to your original question, once a claim is filed, if it's accepted, then the person should be entitled to what's called temporary total benefits for the period that they're treating and off work completely.
Mm-hmm.
Those benefits are usually 2/3 of their salary up to the state cap. Every year the cap changes. Once they treat and some physician tells them, look, you've reached a plateau. We can't do anything more for you at this time. You're going to need long-term care, maintenance. Then they go before the commissioner for what's called a permanent disability award, either partial or permanent, partial or total, depending on their medical situation. Mm-hmm. So I think the advantage of workers' comp is, number one, there's no proof or expenses in the beginning to get this thing going. And as you and I both know, in a head injury, the sooner, the better.
Absolutely.
And if you can go to an attorney, hopefully within 30 days, you're going to have that treatment. My experience is insurance companies are very hesitant in workers' comp to accept head injuries because it opens up a whole Pandora's box for them.
Right. And what we talk about is there's no pull down menu of how long this is going to be or how much this is going to be or what services are going to be required. I would much rather have a broken arm where I know it's going to be 4 weeks in a cast, 4 weeks PT, and now you're back at the job. And brain injury doesn't work that way, and it just gets
No,
really muddled and messy.
no. And my quote to my clients when they come in the office is, a head injury person, you got to understand, they don't know what they don't know.
Absolutely.
The injury is in the head. So how would they be able to know, you know, specifically what's going on? And therefore, you need professionals, you need help,
Hmm.
and you need to make sure and keep that insurance company's feet to the fire to authorize this stuff quickly, efficiently, and having the best medical care that you can get.
And how about when, and I'm just going back to people that we talk to, the insurance company requires you to go to a particular doctor or a particular carrier. You don't, do you give up some control over which doctors you can go to, which therapists you can go to when workers' comp is paying for it?
See, you do know a little bit about workers' comp than you think.
Yeah.
That's a great question because, yes, they like to maintain control. And yes, they have a right to do what's called IMEs, which is, it's a misnomer if you ask me, but it's called independent medical exam.
Right. Independent medical exam, as long as the check clears from the insurance company.
That's right.
Right.
So these IMEs are set up either by our side or their side, but yes, they do have their physicians that they want, and they're allowed to choose some. But in Maryland, the claimant has a right to choose his or her treater, the
Hmm.
treating doc.
Okay.
So if there is a dispute, if I fear that that physician is not the right one, the remedy is filing issues and going to an administrative hearing with the client to get what we want.
So they want you to go to Dr. X. You don't, and Dr. X has been on the payroll for them for decades, and so you want them to go to this other treating physician, or they already have a treating physician that they want to keep. Then you have to argue for it and keep, and they
Yes.
can still send it to Dr. X, but you do have a shot at getting to the one that you want.
Yeah, generally it's definitely that the claimant in Maryland gets to pick his or her physician. The problem is, as you know, with brain, it expands.
Hmm.
There's multiple
Sure.
healthcare providers. Sometimes there's an access to care issue, long waiting lists now post-pandemic.
Oh my
We're
gosh.
all facing that, issue.
Well, and
Um,
geographic too. If I'm in, if I'm in the western part of the state or the eastern part of the state or in a rural part of the state, I've got to get to Baltimore. I've got to get to DC. I've got to get,
well,
whatever.
luckily, if I have catastrophic cases, I do get them to authorize transportation,
Oh, okay.
definitely. So that they can have, the ability to get there, even if like their caretaker or their relative can't go with them. I think that creates a really big burden on the family to
Sure.
shoulder
Oh, absolutely.
because they have their own jobs and their own lives. And if that person feels secure that they will get the treatment and they have the transportation, hopefully they'll be consistent and get the next step levels of help that they need.
Hmm.
Um, I have one, client right now that has four different therapists, from the injury, and they're in different locations.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
I want her to get well, I want her to get the best. And if there's a multidiscipline place nearby that can handle all of it, great. But if there isn't, I want to make sure she gets what she needs.
What would you find be the most or the biggest misconceptions that you have to sort of educate your clients about when they're coming to you with a workers' comp case?
Well, I think we covered one,
Hmm.
which is the fees.
Correct.
They don't have to pay that. And the second one we covered is that they're not creating a lawsuit on the employer.
Hmm.
And I think the third would be probably that, you know, it doesn't end. In other words, if I get an accepted case and I am able to help with getting the treatment, I'm able to help them getting their temporary benefits of indemnity paid. Where does it go from there? That's the scary part for people.
Hmm.
Then what happens? I can't go back to my former job.
Hmm.
What happens? Um, I can't do X for myself. What happens? That's the hard part when everything kind of comes to a halt and there you are standing by yourself. Um, and I want people to know that with workers' comp, that it doesn't have to be that way. Um, I can keep the file technically open for the lifetime. for medicals. I can keep any kind of maintenance care if I go before the commission to argue for it. I've had situations where I had to get certain vans restructured so they could drive. Um, and then as to work, that has to be on an individual basis. If the individual is very motivated and wants to work,
Mm-hmm.
I will help them try to get to work. I mean, I will do whatever we need to do to get a counselor or vocational efforts done. If they feel that they don't and they're going to eventually go on Social Security disability, we usually then plan out a different route
Mm-hmm.
because there are set offs depending whether they're a private worker or if they work for a municipality or government that has different retirement regulations. So it gets complex down the road. So I think what I'd want them to know is that we have to treat you as an individual. We have to respect your wishes on how you want to live. And we have to create a plan for that, an individual plan.
And so it sounds like there's two tracks, and you're going to sort of establish that probably not immediately, but fairly soon. Are you looking to get back to work and do something, or are you thinking that this is going to be, or particularly with brain injury, that the challenges are too great that you're really not going to be able to do any kind of sustainable, day to
Yeah,
day
that's
work?
between I put that for the individual and their doctor, and I respect whatever their decision's going to be. Um, Everybody's going to have a different look on that. And I'm a very strong believer after almost 4 decades of helping people that you have to listen to the individual. You have to listen to them, see what they want. Don't tell them what they want.
Mm-hmm.
As a lot of people want to do in either fields. Just listen. They'll tell you, and you'll know how to best help them. If they want their families involved, I'm more than welcome that. Um, you know, they tell me how they want it to go.
Tell me about your conversation. I have had my injury, and we found the person tied the scaffolding wrong. Tell me a little bit about how that workers' comp conversation happens into litigation or into personal injury, um, and
You mean
how,
how to go
yeah,
after the third
yeah,
party case?
or just how do you talk to somebody about that? Here are the things that we need to know. Here's the kind of evidence we're going to have. Here's the because it's managing expectations in some regards. Like, oh boy, I won the lottery. It's like, well, no, but and it's also going to take a while. So how does that conversation happen that we're going to start talking about, maybe thinking about
Yeah, yeah.
litigating, because there's a transition
Well,
there.
yeah. And sometimes there's what we call combo cases. They're on the job and they have a car accident. They get hit by a Mack truck from behind,
Mm-hmm.
hit the windshield, have a head injury.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the workers' comp pretty much takes the beginning of the case, it handles the treatment and handles them and all.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the client reaches maximum medical improvement, knows what his earning capacity is going to be, then we can evaluate what the third party case would be like. Um, then we have to find out what coverage this person has. If there's enough coverage that we can pay back people and the claimant still recovers so that it's worth his while to expend the energies and the time. Each case is like totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So when you're talking about the person, you're talking about the person who was in the car accident, not the driver, not your client, but the person who was in the accident itself. Do they have enough coverage to make it worthwhile to go after?
correct.
Okay. And then,
Yeah, I happen to be the editor of the Maryland, a co-editor of the Maryland Automobile Accident Death Book that's put out by the Maryland Bar Association.
mm-hmm.
I put that out with my friend, defense attorney, Mr. DeCaro last year, but I've been the original editor. So this is our third edition, in 30 years or whatever. So I did tell the Bar Association they may want to look for someone for the fourth edition because it's a lot of work. But no, it's very important, like I said before, to have your counselor or your advisor or your attorney know the interplay that you're trying I know what your question is. It's
Mm-hmm.
important to know the interplay because
Mm-hmm.
you could damage them. If you don't know how, let's say he works as a school bus driver, in the county, um, which I represent a lot of, what happens when they can't return? Are they entitled to their retirement? And is there a retirement offset against workers' comp benefits? So do you want to get his permanency award first before he retires? Because after he retires, he wouldn't get one. I mean, if you don't watch all these little time factors, you could blow things.
And that's, I think, and that kind of leads me to my next question, which is, what advice do you give to someone who's been injured on the job or a family member? And it's sounds to me like, particularly with all the nuances and the need for expertise, you really need to find a good attorney. I mean, you really do, as part of your team, not solely, but because
Yeah, you need
so
you
many
need
things
someone.
are out there, so many wheels are spinning, both the medical and the emotional and the legal, all of that stuff is interplayed.
Yeah, and you want someone that has the compassion to understand all that as well as the legal acumen
Mm-hmm.
because we work as a team in my office and everyone is as passionate about what we do as I am. And so we want to hear what our client wants us to do. And then we will fight for whatever is best. But like I said, there are, as you just mentioned, many, many floating parts and they all have to be put together. And when you have a brain injury, that's the least thing you want to worry about. You want to put your life in someone's hands that you trust. And as I said, we will talk to the family if the client wants us to. We will definitely talk to the family and continue. In our firm, the other thing that's really nice is that we have different divisions or groups. So I do workers' comp and personal injury, but if you need a trust, we do have a Department of Estates and Trusts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a one-stop shop where you're not wandering around looking for someone to interact. But um, yeah, it's challenging, but it's been my lifetime of work.
What has drawn you, or where does this come from? Where does this passion for helping people? Because doing something for 4 decades, especially something as difficult as working with families that have been injured and have had their lives devastated, and working with workers' comp with people that have had their careers, taken off track or their lives disrupted or devastated. What carries you forward? What's pulling you on?
Well, I think our family as a tradition have been people who care to help others. But much of my family are in the medical profession.
Mm-hmm.
I happen to like writing and advocacy, so I guess I chose something that also is related to the medical field, um, which is really fascinating. And I've also been able to develop through these years contacts within the medical field that educate me, that keep me up to date. We had a brain injury case where the defense was saying, oh, we had an MRI, there can't be any residuals. This must be post traumatic stress disorder or it must be depression. But no, our expert said it is organic. I mean, this is true. And the reason why is there is other diagnostics that you can do besides a regular MRI.
Right.
And I use my experts to help me. There's something called a diffusion tensor imaging,
Right.
and that goes a next level from regular MRI.
Mm.
Well, if the other expert doesn't know about that and is just talking, about what he knows, then we have to come in and go one step further and say, excuse me, no. Um, so I do have to rely on experts. I'm not a medical expert. I'm a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always new technology, new things that you have to keep up to date with in the field, constantly changing. And I admire these physicians and all the healthcare workers that work alongside of them, from the therapists. I mean, I can't name them all, but you all know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the dedicated soldiers. They're the ones right in the front line helping these people to get better. And they have the patience and the compassion. So I just feel honored to be able to be part of that community.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is as you're talking, I'm thinking about particularly in brain injury, because there have been so many different, because unfortunately, medicine advances during wartime, and with, IEDs and brain injuries being the signature injury of Iraq and Afghanistan, there's been tremendous strides in dealing with and recognizing brain injury and the different therapies like you're talking about. And
One of the things, if I
it's
can
really,
tell
you
you,
got to keep up with that stuff, right?
absolutely, that's exactly right. And one of the things, if I could add, Brian, is that we're in a different world right now. I've seen this happen through many decades, but right now I'm seeing so many more brain injuries than I've ever seen because of the violence in our schools, in our hospitals, everywhere. As everyone knows, someone knows someone who's been touched already. But particularly my educators and my healthcare workers, I get very upset about it because they are there to accomplish something. For example, the teachers are there to teach our youth, our future. This is our future. They're not there to defend themselves against violence. They're not there to be security guards. And even I'd say teachers who are there for kids that are developmentally challenged
Sure.
or artistic, they get injured. And from my perspective, I have to be there to say, it's okay, you can file workers' comp, because they're so dedicated.
Right.
They feel that they're doing something against a student who they feel didn't mean to hurt them. And I have to say, no, it's okay. You got to protect yourself and get better.
Right.
You're not going after the kid. It's okay.
And you can't go back to the classroom if you're only 50% yourself or 75% yourself. You need to get healed. You need to be, and recognize some of those challenges. And I know we've talked about this before we get started too, about the violence in the hospitals. The nurses getting attacked, the therapists getting attacked. And it can also grow out of the different, if you're working in an emergency room and you see an emergency and then people come in to try and maybe finish the job that didn't get done. And then you're encountering just so much more. It's just so overwhelming in those different areas.
Yeah, the emergency rooms get packed with clients on drug or, things, and they come at them with such force that they wouldn't come after someone naturally, if they weren't on medications drugs. And who protects them, and how will they get better? So yeah, it's a growing concern, and I really appreciate your show in terms of providing people with outlets and knowledge about this. It's tremendous.
When do you have resources that you recommend or websites that you recommend for somebody who's sort of contemplating coming to an attorney or filing a workers' comp claim? Is there some resource that you like to give people or make people aware of? I mean, other than your website, is there other places that you point people to?
Probably it's best to come in and get the literature and the charts and the information that we've collected over the years and that we have currently. We have a folder that really gives you all that, because you're probably better at the medical websites and help. But we can work with people. We know other attorneys who do Social Security. We can be the hub to help with any other issues that you might need. I sit on the Senate Oversight Committee in the Maryland Legislature as a public member, not elected, it's appointed, for also many decades, I think about 20 years. And we deal with issues usually that are brought up by the community. Workers' comp is a very good community of plaintiff and defense. We usually work on things together. If there's an issue, of course, the past couple of years since COVID, it hasn't been that active. But when things come up, like for example, we discussed whether we should put in a provision in the statute when COVID came as to a presumption. If you're a healthcare worker, if you're a police firefighter, will you be granted a presumption that because you caught COVID, you will be given that status? And they decided not to. There is no presumption. And they did, however, allow these claims to go forward just on the normal burden of proof.
Hmm.
If there is a burden, if there's a proven causal connection that you did get on the job, it was covered. So the community works together, but they don't like to do drastic changes. If we were going to only deal with this quote pandemic for 3 years, they didn't want to change the whole statutory structure for 3 years. Even so, some of us said to implement it and let it have sunset
Right,
legislation.
exactly. That would mean to me, just an outside looking in, it would make the most sense if I create, if I presume that I treat somebody, or I go into a room, or I go into a hospital and all of a sudden I get COVID, that the presumption would be that I got it on the job.
Mm-hmm.
And then if
Yeah.
you wanted to go away, just let it go until the 30 days or 60 days after the public emergency was declared done,
Yeah,
and then it goes
exactly.
away. But anyway, I get that.
Yeah, yeah. But let me also say that for these brain injury people, the workers' compensation really is a great statute in Maryland because if the doctor deems you cannot return to your former job, it doesn't matter if they let you go or not. You're
Mm-hmm.
entitled to vocational rehabilitation if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
And they will work with you to get you as close as possible that, can reasonably be done to the income that you had before. So I think there's a lot of good benefits to the Maryland law. I think that in the whole DMV, if someone had to get hurt, Maryland would be the best one. Um, Virginia has a very different statute. DC has a very different statute. They have their pros and cons, but Maryland has the longest reopening statute. For example, if you get your award and you receive those monies, on the last day you receive those checks, you still have 5 more years to reopen that case.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So let me just wrap it up a little bit in terms of if we're thinking about coming to visit you, is there information we should gather to make that first visit more valuable to you? I mean, is there evidence that we need to be gathering, or doctor's notes that we need to have that would make sitting down with you the first time more valuable?
No, really, we'll once we get an authorization, we'll be able to get what we need. We just want you to come in and ask your questions and bring your folks if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
The earliest, the better. I would not wait. If
Okay.
there's a work-related accident, I would call our office. I don't know if you want me to give my email
Well, we can put it
or
in our show notes. We're going to put your website in your show notes, and
okay.
we'll put your contact information in the show notes of the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. We have an office in Greenbelt and Rockville, and we also do, since most people now actually prefer it, we can do Teams or Zoom meetings or,
Mm-hmm.
conference calls. If you don't want to come in, you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's very important to come in as soon as possible. Do
Okay.
not wait
Okay.
because everything will really depend on that. There are forms that need to be filed administratively online with the Workers' Comp Commission. They're very efficient in Maryland. Everything's online. And if you don't get that signed, it's going to take an additional 30 days to process the award. So you're sitting home without a check. You're sitting home without the ability to file for medical treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to get the ball rolling is what I would recommend. And then we'll sit down and go over everything that, we might need and answer all your questions.
So the thing I love you talking about, particularly with brain injury, the sooner you file, the sooner you get access to care. That for a brain injury, that first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days is so critical. You don't want to be sitting around waiting for some signature in some form to get things going and get things started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In my experience, it really has been, and I've, like mentioned at the very beginning, I've been involved in a client interview with their family there, let's say a week after an accident, or
Mm-hmm.
they injured their hand. I had a man who's worked in an elevator who had his hand chopped off almost, but he was able to save it. And, obviously their concern was patching his hand back up.
Right.
But when I was talking to him and his wife, it was about 6 o'clock at night one evening. And I remember staying late and I remember looking at him and he wasn't acting right. And his face started to change. And I looked at his wife and said, "This meeting's over. I want you to take him over to the medical center right now. He's having a stroke."
Wow.
Because what happened was apparently the doctor said later that because the hand was the blood flow or something happened that triggered all of his arteries that were clogged to just, I don't know, for some reason, the blood pressure issue came up, whether it
Mm,
was pain or
yeah,
whatever. I can't remember right now. It was a while back. I
sure.
have to look at it. But the the the, the main reason I'm saying this is because, again, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And you need someone who's professional to look at you and
Wow.
to help you.
Incredible. Yeah, that and those are the kinds of things that, it over time, which I think is the beauty of having that 5 year look, the 5 additional years after the final check, because those kinds of things can, maybe he threw a clot from whatever injury had happened in the car crash or whatever it was, the elevator accident, and so
Exactly.
it continues to have those
That's
ramifications.
exactly right. That's exactly right. And later, the doctor said that that saved him, to go right then that minute to the hospital.
Incredible.
So,
Well, listen, I certainly appreciate your time, and you've given us some really good nuggets to sort of work with. And I love that, the takeaway message here is, quick, do it quick. And you don't have to worry about, oh no, I don't have, everything's in a box and I've got it, and you're not going to want to see it until I get it organized. No, you'll get what you need when you get what you need, but you need to get started. You need to go
that's
ahead
a
and get
very good
started.
point.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you for spending time with us on Brain Injury Connector. Thank you for what you and your office are doing to sort of help people and help in this community. And really look forward to, working with you in the future.
Brian, thank you so much. It's just, as you can tell, something I'm very passionate about, and I really appreciate what you're doing for the community.
So we're going to do a 5 Thoughts Flashback. 5 Thoughts Flashback is when I take a look at a previous edition of 5 Thoughts Friday. 5 Thoughts Friday is our e-newsletter. We put it together every week, and I think we're in our, 6.5, 7 years? I don't know what we're at, but it's been a long time. It started out as a temporary thing and has really kind of grown and has become one of our best initiatives. A lot of people look forward to it. One of my favorite emails that I get back is, I don't look at many emails, but I always look forward to 5 Thoughts Friday on Friday. So you can go to 5 Thoughts Friday. You can check our show notes here and go to it. This particular is July 7th, 2023, so we're not going back too far. And the title is BMI, Barbara, and Braun. And we try to do some alliterative titles just to keep things interesting for us. And 5 Thoughts Friday is really a way for us to sort of communicate with you things that we're looking at, things that we find interesting. Sometimes it's just we think it's cool, and we want to make sure that everybody knows about it. Typically, it's 3 stories. They can be research-based. They can be inspirational stories, maybe sports stories, maybe recovery stories. It can be talking about different therapies, unique abilities of certain individuals that are coming back from brain injury, celebrate recovery in a variety of different ways. We talk about the different aspects of recovery. It can be recovery with codependency on alcohol or steroids, things like this. And so we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to put things in front of you. The fourth thought is typically a book, and it's a book we're reading, a book we think is important, a book we think you'll enjoy. Sometimes it can be a work of nonfiction, work of fiction, but typically it's something in and around some of the things that people are working on when they're part of their brain injury recovery. And then the fifth thing is a quote we're contemplating. And it's kind of an inspirational quote to send you off onto your weekend with an uplifting word, something to think about, something to ponder. If you scroll all the way down, and sometimes Google is cutting us off and you have to hit read more if you're looking at us in Google, you hit read more, you go down, you'll find a beautiful picture, typically a seasonal picture. If you click on that picture, it will take you to the Maryland Board of Tourism calendar for the weekend, for typically the weekend that the 5 Thoughts was ahead of. But if you're reading this or watching this or listening to this at a different time, if you click on that picture, it will take you to the current calendar. And the reason we think it's important is what the Board of Tourism is celebrating is things you can do in the state of Maryland So if you're listening to us in Maryland, this is going to be, all about festivals, park openings, different concerts, concert venues. It can be group meetings, all kinds of things. Because, we certainly believe here at the Brain Injury Association that a healthy body is a healthy mind, a healthy brain. And in order to do that, you want to be engaged in nature, you want to be engaged in the community, and finding out activities that are going on in the state of Maryland. There's certainly something to try and inspire you to get out, get off the couch, get out and enjoy this beautiful state that we have, from the mountains to the coast, and everything in between, and all the wonderful food festivals and color festivals and arts and crafts fairs that we have, celebrations of groups, and things like that. So we want to get you out. So just click on that picture and you'll find those things later. This particular issue, July 7th, BMI, Barbara, and Braun. The first article we take a look at, and this is a little bit more of a general topic, but it's certainly no less important, that the American Medical Association came out and has basically advised doctors to pay less attention to body mass index in determining whether a patient is a healthy weight, saying the measure does not predict disease risk equally across all racial and ethnic groups. So I don't know what your BMI is. I know what my BMI is. BMI has been my bane of my existence my entire life, because I'm just obese. I'm just obese. And sometimes I'm morbidly obese and sometimes not obese. But they change it around, they move it around, so sometimes I'm less, sometimes I'm more. But it's certainly, if you take just straight BMI, height divided by weight, I just remember in Baltimore one time, I think they did Ray Lewis's BMI. And, Ray Lewis, who is probably one of the greatest athletes to play defense in the entire NFL in the history of the game, who was, a stud from the word go, an amazing athlete. And I think, his BMI put him in obese as well. And it's like, he had like 7% body fat, but because he was so large and tall, that, they put his body mass index is ridiculously high. So anyway, what they're really finding, what they're basically acknowledging is that quote unquote normal, quote unquote overweight, quote unquote obesity and morbid obesity, despite there being evidence that it's inaccurate, has continued to sort of be the prevalent measure of weight and health. And so the AMA at its latest meeting basically said, okay, it should be one factor, but things like body composition, belly fat, waist circumference, and other genetic factors are equally important, or maybe even more so. So this is an interesting thing when we're talking about trying to live a healthy life. Like I said, healthy body, healthy brain. We want to make sure that when we're measuring for healthy body, that we're not losing the big picture in the weeds. So AMA is coming out with that. You can take a look at that story. Another really important story in this edition is celebrating Disability Pride Month. So July is just, we've just come off of June, which was Pride Month. Disability Pride Month is in July, and the reason that July was chosen to be Disability Pride Month is that the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed July 20th, 1990. So we're coming up on a history on that, but July becomes Disability Pride Month. And it's really just about, they have celebrations throughout some of the larger metropolitan areas, some of the smaller areas, but the reality is that, individuals that are part of the LGBTQ plus community, there is there's a subset that have disabilities, and they need to be acknowledged and accepted, not only for the stigma that they face against their disability, but the stigma that they face for their sexual orientation and sexual choices. And the reality needs to be that we want to be more accepting of all, and to acknowledge and remind ourselves the ADA prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities. We also need to sort of acknowledge that there are individuals with disabilities that may or may not be represented and need to be acknowledged and brought into the fold, broad inclusion. Anytime you're talking about to do any kind of justice any kind of inclusion, we need to make sure that we include everybody. And so this article is about Disability Pride Month, a little bit of the history, and a little bit of the events that are going on. We also have an article on a sort of a non-invasive way to track Alzheimer's. And now Alzheimer's is a degenerative disease, and so when we're looking at ABI and TBI, so acquired brain injury and traumatic brain injury, Alzheimer's is more of a degenerative chronic disease. But what we're finding is over time that individuals with brain injuries may be more susceptible, or there may be a correlation between brain injury and Alzheimer's, brain injury and Parkinson's, brain injury and dementia. And so we continue to sort of look at those links and look at that. And so this is sort of a new NIA-funded study that takes a look at changes in the retina to be able to track some of the protein deposits, some of the thinning tissues in the retina, to be able to sort of track, and there's a correlation between that and the progression of Alzheimer's. And so that may be a non-invasive way to really kind of have a definitive tracking solution in addition to cognitive impairment, maybe in addition to maybe balance impairment, in addition to the other some of the other symptoms. This may be an actual physical indicator that we can maybe reliably detect and track Alzheimer's. So it's a really interesting study, and we have access to reading about that study. The book we recommended, which is a wonderful book that we had just recently received, it's Barbara Rubin's book called More Than You Can See, A Mother's Memoir. And Barbara's daughter Jennifer was injured at 17 in a really bad car accident and suffered a traumatic brain injury. She was in a 2-week coma, but when she woke up, she could not communicate. She was unable to speak or function on her own, and so Jennifer's got to learn the basic life skills, both in a rehab facility and coming home. And so this is Barbara's acknowledgement of this challenge and a memoir of her family's and her daughter's recovery from brain injury. Very powerful story. And you can click on that and find it in Amazon or wherever you find your books. More Than You Can See by Barbara Rubin. And our quote, which is where the Braun comes from Ralph Braun: "I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do." And that certainly comes at a timely fashion as being part of our Disability Pride Month. So I love that quote. We put that quote in. And then, of course, we have we have a sunset picture at the beach as our seasonal picture. Click on it and find out more information about the calendar. So that is our 5 Thoughts Friday flashback for July 7th, 2023. You can click in the show notes and find it. Take a look at it. If you decide that this is something you're interested in or something that you want to find out more about, we encourage you to go to our website, www.biamd.org, and you can then click on the blue button at the top that says 5 Thoughts Friday. Give us your first name, your last name, and your email address, and then we will send you your own copy of 5 Thoughts Friday at 9 a.m. on Friday morning. And if you don't have time to look at it or forget to click it or don't see it, we'll send it back to you on Monday morning to give you a second shot to take a look at the stories of the week. We really encourage you to take a look at this. We work very hard to put together some really interesting stories, and and want to provide you the best information we can, the most cutting-edge information we can, some of the most inspirational information that we can. And so take a look at it. 5 Thoughts Friday. So this was 5 Thoughts Friday Flashback, and hope you take a look at it. I'd like to thank Debora Fajer-Smith for coming on today and telling us a little bit more about workers' comp. It is such a complicated issue, or it feels like it's a complicated issue, and there's so much stigma associated around it. And we're really grateful that she came in and sort of helped us sort of work through that. And we're very grateful that she and her team work very hard and have worked for a very long time to listen, to take the information in and try and manifest what somebody wants for their lives and not tell them what they have to do. And, we who are great advocates of person-centered outcomes and person-centered planning greatly appreciate an attorney and a set of attorneys who've made it their life's work to try and ensure that they're people first and symptoms second and numbers third or fourth. And we're blessed to have her in the state and to have her as an advocate both on the Senate side and all the different things that they do. So it was wonderful to have her with us. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something out. If you want to find any more information about her or law firm, please take a look at our show notes. You can find out more there. And as a wind-up here, I don't want to sound like a broken record for those of you who even know what a broken record is. For those who know what a record is, and for those what a broken record is, I don't want to sound like one. But I'm going to do this anyway. Maybe it's vinyl. Maybe it's like you don't want to sound like scratched vinyl. People know about vinyl now, right? Maybe. We cannot be an association without members. And your membership is vital. It's vital for our conversations that we have with policymakers, with grant makers, with donors, so that we can say we are a strong organization. We represent the entire state of Maryland. We represent the entire brain injury community in the state of Maryland and beyond. And therefore, regardless of your ability to contribute, being a member is so important. So as an injury survivor, as a brain injury survivor, it's free. You can go to our website, click on the membership button, sign up, and then you can get our emails, our mailings. Five Thoughts Friday can be a part of the offerings that we have with the membership discounts. If you're a family member, it's only $35 a year, and that covers your entire family. And then if you're a professional, it's $95 a year, which is, again, very, very cheap when you take a look at other membership pricings. And it does get you discounts at the conference. It does get you discounts with some of our other webinar offerings. We are trying to improve our membership offerings to try and provide more webinars of interest to people, to try and provide more networking events of interest to people. We're going to be doing a lot more in fiscal year 24, which just started. And I encourage you to try and take a look at becoming a member because it benefits so many different aspects of our organization. And not only our media things that we're doing here in our podcasts and our e-newsletters and our Instagram, but it also helps us, put on other programs and do other initiatives that we may or may not have funding for without memberships. And it does certainly offer opportunities for you to meet other people in the community. And as so many people have come forward and told us, I thought I was alone. I felt alone. I felt like there was nobody else out there that I could talk to, that I could relate to. And now that I found you, you meaning the Brain Injury Association of Maryland, it's such a relief. I have a community. I have people I can talk to. I have resources. I have access. I have conversations that I have not been able to have with anybody else. Nobody understands. Nobody can make sense of what I'm trying to say. And when I speak with y'all, I just get nods and acknowledgement. So I would encourage you to please, if you're not a member, please become a member. If you're already a member, please renew your membership and become a part of this initiative that we've been carrying on since 1983 for almost 4 full decades, and trying to make things better for not only individuals with brain injuries, but family members and the healthcare providers that care for them. So please consider becoming a member. And if you think about it and you like this podcast, go ahead and send it to somebody you like. Go ahead and send it to somebody else. Send it to a friend, send it to a family member, send it to a colleague. Make sure that our word gets out and we're able to reach a broader audience than just the people that we ourselves can speak to. And that's where you come in, and you can help us both becoming a member and sending our podcast out into the ether to find whoever needs it. If the student is willing, the teacher will find them. Let's send it to somebody who needs to hear these words, who needs to hear these stories, who needs to have this information, and make them a part of our community. So this is Brain Injury Connector. I'm Brian Pugh. I know that you've got a lot of opportunities to spend an hour listening to podcasts or doing something else. I really appreciate and I'm grateful that you spent your hour with us. Hope you found something valuable. Hope you found something worthy of your time. And I hope you will come back when we have our next edition of Brain Injury Connector.